so I want to make sure that I show you guys a lot of UFOs, not just talk about them. So while I'm talking during the first hour here, there's going to be raw footage playing. These are all UFOs I shot up in Sedona. All of these were using a satellite tracker. So all the ones in these videos, there was nothing in the sky that was supposed to be there. So you can go ahead and even just watch that the whole time. I mean, that's what you came here to see, I feel like. And all this today is all John Lear's fault. Him and Karen. Karen got our intro story a little bit wrong. I was way creepier than how she made me sound. Yeah. So Melinda didn't tell me about Karen. I saw a post from Karen on Facebook tagging Melinda, and Karen had a video of the craft, and I wanted to be like Karen. And so I sent her a message on Facebook as a random guy, just like, hey, you want to come camping in the woods with me alone? And look where we are now, yeah. And I say it's John Lear's fault very lovingly. He was my best friend for like 15 years. And not my best friend like we hung out and did every single thing together. It wasn't that. He was the person that was the most friendly to me and the most accepting, and he didn't have to be. And it just started because I would stay up late at night trying to listen to Coast to Coast when I was younger, and I would always hear John Lear talking, and he was always my favorite person. I would look up any interviews I could find just to hear him kind of talk. The UFO stuff was always interesting to me. I didn't really know why. I just thought it was strange. There was still something in the world we couldn't figure out. And then, these strange things kind of started happening to me in my life at about the age of 24. And these strange things kind of made me start to feel a little bit crazy. Like at night, a couple examples. I used to wear glasses. I ended up getting LASIK, but I used to put my glasses on my dresser next to my bed when I'd go to sleep so that in the morning I could get up and put them on. And so one day I get up and I go to reach for my glasses and they're not there, and I look and they're at the far end of the dresser somehow. That's weird. It's like I really doubt I put my glasses there and slid them down. Thought, whatever, don't think too much into it. The next morning I tried to get up and my glasses were kind of in the same direction but had gone off the end of the countertop this time. So I decided to change where I put my glasses. That was the best thing I could think. So I started to put them on my alarm clock. I figured when I hit my alarm, my glasses will be right there, put them on. And that worked for a week, and then I went to shut off my alarm. The glasses were missing. Couldn't find them anywhere. I really didn't try to explain it to myself, and the funny thing was they didn't appear until after I got my LASIK surgery. Then one morning, I went to hit my alarm, and my glasses were on my alarm, and it was a good 6 months later. So I thought that's really kind of strange. And then I woke up one morning, or in the middle of the night, and my pillow was missing. I only slept with one pillow, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was just like, what is happening? Like, I don't get it. And so I just slept, and I got up in the morning and was hunting around my room for my pillow. And I had one of those changing screens as a decoration, like in the corner of the room. And I couldn't find the pillow, and then I thought maybe back, and I moved it, and my pillow was behind it, tucked into the corner of the wall. And I just, okay, this doesn't make any sense. And then the part that really got me kind of thinking something was up was I woke up in a panic one night, kind of startled, and when I woke up it was a very much a like that. My hands were on my chest, and when I woke up that way, the sheet got pulled up over my head so tight against my forehead that it pulled my head back. And my instant reaction was my hands reached up and I pulled the sheet down. And when I did that, I was frozen completely. I couldn't move my eyes, nothing at all. And I thought like my roommate must be in my room somehow messing with me. And I calmed down after a couple minutes, looked around. He was sleeping in his room. There was no explanation. I couldn't figure it out. And then the last thing that kind of got me to seek John's help was I was giving a friend a ride home one night. She had been out drinking. I wasn't. She called me to see if I could give her a safe ride home. So I picked her up, and we're on the freeway. We were going 80 miles an hour in the fast lane. And she said something to me, and I looked over to answer her. And when I looked back, all the cars in front of us were stopped, all the way across the freeway. And I tried to hit the brakes, and we were still maybe 10 or 20 feet from all the cars, and we're still going 60. And so I shouted, "We're going to hit." At the last minute, I tried to wedge my car between the cars and not hit head on. And so at the last minute, I grabbed the wheel, cranked it, ducked, stood on the brake. The last thing I heard were the brakes and the tires chirp. And then we were sitting in the car, now in the carpool lane, going straight, going 80 miles an hour. Both of us upright, kind of looking at each other. All the cars, they're all behind us. They're all still stopped. There was not a... I was in a Chevy Tahoe, so it wasn't easy to... And there was nothing wrong with my car at all. And we both kind of sat there and looked at each other, and she was just like, okay. And I didn't think about it for a while, and then it started kind of weirding me out a little bit. And years later, I emailed her. I still had her email. I said, because I thought maybe I'm remembering it differently. And so I emailed her and asked her, "Hey, do you remember something happening in my car one night?" And her reply was, "Oh my gosh, yes." And she recounted it pretty much the same way. So I was in Vegas one weekend with a friend, and it was Sunday, and we were going to drive home. And I looked at my friend and said, "I really want to buy some cigars and give them to John Lear." I was like, he's like my favorite celebrity. He's just a guy, but he's my favorite person. And so he always said on the radio that he loves cigars, and that he's listed in the white pages, and then so you could look him up if you ever wanted to. So I went and bought like these three $50 cigars and went to the house. I wanted to put them in the mailbox, and there's a big gate around the house. So there's no mailbox, and I couldn't do anything with the cigars. So I thought, I don't want these things. I'm going to just call the phone number. And I called the number, and John picked up the phone. And I never forget it because I'd heard his voice so many times in interviews and on the radio, and then to hear it like talking to me. The only interaction he and I had up to that point was an online forum. It was obscure. It was called GLP, Godlike Productions. And he had a thread on there that we could ask questions, and he answered one or two of my questions. And so when he answered the phone, he said, "Hello." And I said, "John, my name is Juergen, and you don't know me. I have cigars for you." And he said, "What's your name?" I said, "It's Juergen." And I said, "We talked on GLP." And John said, "GLP? You better come in." And he opened the gates and went into the house and spent like 6 hours with him that first day. And I think the reason we got along so much is because John and I were both obsessed with the moon. The moon is the weirdest thing anywhere in the universe. You can't find another one like it in the known universe. So, and the more you study it, the weirder it gets. I don't recommend studying the moon because there's no answers to it. So John and I would really go down these great rabbit holes, and he had photos that I couldn't see anywhere else. He knew NASA started Photoshop airbrushing photos in 1970. So he had some from 1969 that he had blown up really large, and you could go up to these photos and see entire cities inside of craters, streets and buildings and everything. And me and John in his house, this guy has no reason to lie to me. He was just a guy who was excited to share stuff he had collected because nobody listened to him or believed him anyway, but he knew it was real. And I got the same kind of excitement seeing those things. So he and I just really hit it off. And I used to go to Las Vegas for the Las Vegas type of things, and it got to this point where I was going to Vegas just to hang out with an 80-year-old man in his house for a day, and then I'd drive home, and everyone would think that was strange, but those are some of the times I look back on the fondest are sitting with John. And like December 21st, 2012, the world was supposed to end. John and I knew it wouldn't, so I called him and said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "I don't know." I said, "What if I come out and we watch the world not end and smoke some cigars?" And he said, "Let's go." So I went over and hung out with him. And, if you hang out with John, you're going to hear about Bob Lazar. And so that's where my interest in UFOs really kind of picked up. But when I first met John, I was struggling to understand what I was experiencing, and I needed someone to explain it to me. And so one of the first day I was there with him, I explained what happened in the car. I said, John, like, this can't happen. What is that? There's something going on I don't know about. You know, he just looked at me like it's the most normal thing to say, and he was like, oh yeah, the Greys did it. I'm like, okay, can you elaborate? I don't, you know, that doesn't make any sense to me. And he said, well, you were about to die, and your contract doesn't end now. So when that happens, they step in and stop that from happening. There's still more stuff in your plan, and so they're not going to let you ruin it. I thought, okay, that makes more sense, because I tried to tell the story once to a friend, and they were like, oh, that sounds like divine intervention. I was like, it's not. Like, it's not that. The way John explained it is I was a terrible driver, and they had to, like, coddle me from not doing something wrong. So I could accept what he said a little better, I guess. And he told me, if things in your life aren't going easy, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I was like, that's my whole life hasn't been easy. I was like, I'm just trying to be normal. I was like, I just want a job and like some kids and go camping. And he's like, well, you know. And you know, it was only 3 years ago I moved to Cottonwood to do this full time, and it's taken that long to try to embrace this as a subject and try to make it legitimate. But you know, maybe this kind of stuff is what I'm supposed to be doing, but it is because John taught me how to get these videos and how to do this kind of stuff. One of the things he taught me was just don't stay at home. He said, you got to go out there. You know, when I met him, he was still pretty poor health-wise. He couldn't really walk around or really get out of the house. So I started going out to capture evidence to show him, to bring back to his house and be like, John, look what I got, look what I got. But the process to get there still took a while. I would go to his house all the time. We'd sit and chat, and look at pictures, and talk about everything. We did talk about 9/11 a lot. We're not getting into that, but John was a pilot, so he had something to say about that. And it got to the point where everything he told me and the Bob Lazar stuff, I knew UFOs were real because he's not going to lie to me, and I wanted to see them. And the Bob Lazar story is very, it gets tossed around a lot. So I want you guys to hear how the Bob Lazar incident happened as John Lear told me, because he was there. And it started, Bob was not working at Los Alamos anymore. He was in Las Vegas. John had kind of gotten to the point where he was going to give up on the UFO stuff. It just is a pain in the ass in your life when people are going to start attacking you for talking. And so John at the time wanted to sell his house. And his friend Gene Huff was a home appraiser. And Gene Huff wanted the UFO stuff, any files or anything John had. So John told Gene, how about you give me a free appraisal on my house and I'll give you a bunch of UFO stuff. Gene took that offer. Gene didn't know how big John's house was because that was a crap trade for Gene. But Gene brought his friend to help him, and his friend was Bob Lazar. So as they're going around doing measurements around the house and stuff, Gene and John are talking about UFO stuff, and Bob tells them, like, you guys are crazy. He's, you know, I've worked at Los Alamos. If these were real, there is some, this clip is not night vision. You can barely see it. There's a little craft popping up. Yeah, it's a little hard to see. So Bob was like, you guys are absolutely nuts. You know, I would have seen this stuff at Los Alamos. And they told him he's crazy, you know, and then they said, try to get a job out at the base. So Bob sent his resume to Dr. Teller. Dr. Teller already knew Bob because Bob made a name for himself at Los Alamos when he made a rocket-powered Honda Civic that he drove to work every day. You make a name. So when Bob submitted a resume to Dr. Teller wanted him to focus on propulsion because he knew Bob was good at doing propulsion things. And that's how Bob got the job out at S4. And John didn't know about it when he got the job. John only found out when Bob came knocking on his door one day, all excited, and John said, what's going on? And he said, John, I want you to know the craft are real. I saw one today. And he said, did you get your job at S4? And he said, yeah. And John said, get out of here. He's like, they know you're here, you dummy. Don't tell me this now. Go work there for 6 months and then come back and tell me. Yeah, he's like, you moron. And so they kind of laughed, and he's like, no. He said, you've been taking so much crap for this over the years. I want you to know it's real. And that's kind of Bob's mistake as well, because he talked right away. And there's these accounts of them shooting Bob's tires out on the highway. He was sleeping on John's couch for a while to kind of hide from it. And I completely understand why Bob didn't talk to anyone for the longest time, because it did nothing but ruin his life when he tried to just share what we're all missing out on. You know, Bob isn't a UFO guy. He's not into this stuff at all. He's a physicist. And that's what he likes doing. But he's so disappointed that we have this stuff and we're not trying to figure it out. He says, you know, we let 2 guys look at it every few years, but they can't talk to anyone. You know, Bob wanted to talk about this because he feels like this technology should be made available to the smartest people on the planet, and they should be allowed to try to figure this out. And, you know, he's right. But that also might be like a Nikola Tesla, where, hey, I can give the whole world free energy. They're going to say no. So Bob was in a weird spot, and he focused all his time just on his company, United Nuclear. And he's still taken crap over the years and had to deal with problems because he talked about UFOs. I'm grateful now that we have this. I mean, like, we have a group of people that we can come to in a public space. I can sit here and show you like an hour of UFOs flying around, and, you know, nobody's going to get harassed on the way out. So I'm grateful for the time we're at now. 5 years ago even, this wasn't as accepted. And I know 2020 was a crazy year for everyone. It was like my favorite year. Like, they came on the news and were like, UFOs are real, and everyone's like, we don't care. Like, it was the weirdest thing to me. I've been waiting my whole life for the news to go and just say they're real. And it was like, they got COVID. I don't. So I kept on the UFO thing for quite a while because of John. And, you know, when he told me enough that they're real and said, okay, now it's time for me to go find out where they are. I want to see one. That's nice to know they're real, but I want to see them. And so I tried to take a methodical approach to that. Through all our stories and talking and things like that, John and I talked a lot about the Rendlesham Forest incident. This happened in 1980 in the Rendlesham Forest in the UK, but at a U.S. military base there. And the reports were that a triangular craft landed 3 nights in a row in the woods, and some officers went out and actually interacted with the craft while it was out there. John told me, he said, I know for sure that happened. He said, all the other stuff, you know, we look into, he's like, I know this one happened because he knew guys on the base at the time it happened, and he talked to them. Because John knew a lot of people, that's for sure. But he said he talked to guys on the base. So I took that and I looked at that case. And that case provided a list of special places on the planet. The way that list came about is one of the military people touched the craft, and after that he had all this vision of zeros and ones in his head, and he couldn't get it out of his head, so he got a spiral notebook and wrote them down. I believe it was 12 or 13 pages of zeros and ones. And he just put it in his desk drawer to forget about it, because after he wrote it down, they weren't in his vision anymore. It wasn't until 2010 that he showed it to someone, and they instantly recognized it as binary code. But in 1980, it wasn't that familiar of a thing, so he didn't realize it at the time. And then they translated that binary code. And I'll say this, I used the translation of the code and the list of coordinates it gives of special places. Since then, I've learned that translation, it might be generous in how accurate it is, but it didn't matter because it worked for me. When I looked at the list of coordinates, I mean, it's like the Giza Plateau, the Nazca Lines in Peru, a place in Belize, I think the underwater monument in Japan, and then it says Sedona, Arizona. And the thing that stood out to me was the other places have these large monuments and structures, and Sedona doesn't. So I thought, convenient. It's also the closest one to me because I lived in Southern California. But also, that might be the place to see the craft. There's no monument there, so maybe there's something else going on, and that's why it's special. And that was the reason I even tried to go there to see these things. Now learning that those coordinate lists might have stretched the truth a bit was disappointing, but not really, because it still worked. It still brought me to a place where I could see UFOs all the time. And when people ask me about it, the first thing I say is, let's go. Come see them. Like, if you're into UFOs, make a trip up there and just go watch them. They're that common. If there's no clouds, you just sit out a couple hours after sunset. Well, we're going to do it tonight too, I think. You're going to see them flying around in that area. And, leading up to this too, growing up, we camped every summer. And so I've camped in 49 states now. I haven't done Alaska yet. And every one of those trips, we sat out under the stars and looked at the sky. And never in anywhere, any location did I ever see what we see in Sedona all the time. We used all the tracking apps. They're not satellites. And I was on the Discovery Channel with some of my footage, and the skeptics were saying, oh, well, it could be space junk. And I said, well, it could be. But if it was, I'd see it everywhere. You're telling me there's just space junk over Sedona? That doesn't make sense either. And then I have videos where, as I'm filming them like this, I audibly ask them questions. And I preface it by saying, give me a flash for yes. And I'll start asking questions, and they'll start flashing at appropriate time that lines up with the question. So it is not seem like space junk to me. And some of the photos I get, they make really weird and bizarre turns and maneuvers that satellites just wouldn't do. And I have some of those photos in the second half. We're going to go over pictures. And then as you start seeing these things, you've got to start wondering, wait a minute, why are there so many of them? This is weird. And, growing up, I thought UFOs were these little green men that happened to engineer and build this craft on some planet, and they saw Earth, and at least this is a story I'm fed, that they come to Earth to study us, and wow, what are they? And that literally makes no sense at all the more you get into it. For example, if there were an alien race on a planet a few million light years away, and they look at Earth, they're going to see Earth a few million years ago. They're not going to see people here. So it would be really strange for a race of things that are smart enough to develop a craft that can fly through space. It'd be really weird for them to look at a planet, not see humans, and think, let's go study the humans on that planet. So it is weird. But the fact that there's so many, I was like, well, that can't be the right thing. And so as I started realizing how many there were, of course, I just went back to John. And John, what's going on out here? And that's when the disclosure started. It's a funny thing about that word. Everyone is kind of waiting for disclosure to happen. And unfortunately, it's not. Not in the way people are waiting for it to. It's actually always been happening. It's been happening this whole time. However, it happens on a one-on-one basis. The government's not going to come out and say anything because they can't. How can they try to describe something they don't understand? That's not what our government does. Our government releases stuff when they can fully understand it, field every question, and somewhat control the situation, at least be an authority figure or expert on it. And since they can't do that, that disclosure is not going to come from that channel. But I got disclosed enough where I could go out and talk to them, so at least I feel like the disclosure I got was somewhat valid. It led me to a place where I can collect videos and experiences with these craft and even creatures now, and it's simply because of the approach I took. And so when John found a source of information. The reason I value John so much is because he weeded through all the nonsense and helped me avoid a lot of that nonsense. And, people call John a lot of names. They call him just like the craziest person you could ever talk to. I've seen websites that refer to him as a Sith Lord, and I'm like, good God, These people never even met him. You know, he was the nicest man ever. But there was one day when John threw me for a loop, and it's because he started introducing information I wasn't asking about. And that's because he found a true source of information. And that guy's name is Lou. At least that's what we call him. Originally, his name was Sleeper. He was on the forum above Top Secret, ATS, as Sleeper. And the first experience I had, the first way I was introduced to Lou, I was sitting at John's house with him, and John was taking the butt of his cigar to light the next cigar he was going to smoke. And he looked at me and he said, you know, I heard the sun is pregnant. And I was just like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Okay, I was like, come on, man, you got to give me more than that. He said, well. He said, how do you think planets are formed? And I said, well, it's not space dust. That makes no sense. Space is spinning around the sun. If there's dust, it's going to spread out. It's not going to accumulate in a ball. And so I was like, I don't know. I've never been able to understand that. And he said, they're birthed out of stars. And I thought, that's never heard that before. I said, where are you getting this? He said, Lou told me. He said, what Lou said, and actually there's photos of it now, and scientists are completely agreeing with what Lou told us 15 years ago. John was a colorful man. The way he talked and did things, he was fun to be around. So I'm going to try and say it the way he said it. He said, well, Lou told me black holes go around eating up matter through space. And then they poop out stars. Not necessarily whole stars, but the chemicals that then form stars. He then said the stars poop out planets and gas giants poop out the moons. There's probably a better way to describe it than pooping them out, but that's what the old man said, so I just kind of like to share a bit of his colorful insight. Yeah. And so he was excited about it, and so I got excited about it. I was like, so it's pregnant, like what's going to happen? He said, I don't know. And I said, okay. So John and I watched the SOHO camera. It's a camera that's online, SOHO, and it points at the sun 24 hours a day. You can watch it all day long. And John and I took turns watching that thing. I think it was like almost 3 months went by, and we both saw it. We both saw the sun birth a planet. I mean, this fireball comes out of the sun and remains. It's really weird. It just stayed, and it cooled, and it just went into orbit. And I was like, yeah, he was right. And then we found an article that said scientists are noticing that the planet Mercury is made of the same material as sun ejecta. And I thought, well, that's the closest one to the sun. It would probably still be pretty. So there are some scientists that have thrown that idea out. I've recently learned in the past. But it does stand up more than the concept that there's a bunch of dust in space and somehow it balls up and turns into planets with a hot magma core and, you know, all these other things. It seems like they come out of the stars, and even weirder, the moons come out of gas giants. But then you look at Saturn and Jupiter. They each have like 80 moons, and they're constantly getting more. So maybe there really is something to that. You know, these are all things they told me, and I took into account as I tried to proceed. When I find out something's wrong, I let go of it. It's not my opinion. It wasn't John's opinion. You know, these are things that we believe to be true due to checking into them. And that's one of the other things John taught me so much about. To get around the nonsense, get to the source. There's so many people that come out, especially about these subjects, and they want you to listen to what they have to say, and what they have to say is a made-up opinion on how they feel about something. And I never wanted to have that. I really do not have an opinion on UFOs. I know what I've learned so far through these experiences and through evidence and things like that, and that's what builds what I currently believe in. And that's going to change at some point when I get through more of this. And that's how John was. It's a funny thing. If you look back at some of John's old interviews, and I hear him taking crap for it still now. I think Joe Rogan the other day was kind of ribbing John a bit, saying like, wasn't he talking about some soul capturing device on the moon and this and that? And I thought to myself, yeah, he totally was. Like, but he learned that it wasn't there, and then he got over that. However, that clip of him talking and saying that 20 years ago still exists, and people don't realize he was changing his opinion as he learned and as he got new information. And one of the things you see a lot in this field, especially with UFOs and Bigfoots, are these people come into the subject with their opinion at the top. And they're only going to find things that support the one thing they believe. And that's what's holding this whole field back. The whole field is getting ruined by people like that. Because I've met people that tell me the dumbest stuff I've ever heard in my life, and they are so sold on the fact that it's genuine, and when I ask them why, they're just like, somebody told me that. I was like, okay, well, did you look into it? Or, like, I don't want to break their heart and tell them, people can believe absolutely whatever they want, whatever gives you some moral compass and some fun in your life. However, you don't need to go and try to convey yourself as an authority figure in this type of stuff, because there isn't one, especially with UFOs. I've met so many people that have told me they're UFO experts, and I'm like, do you have one? And they're like, no. I was like, okay, well, how do you fix it? And they're like, huh? I'm like, okay, well, if I said I was a Corvette expert, you would think I probably have one or know how to fix them. So when somebody says to me they're an expert in something, that means, the word expert means authority figure. And the reason people are doing that in this field, they do not want you to be able to question what they're saying. And I think that's terrible. You should be able to question every bit of everything I say up here, or anyone. Because if you can't question it, they're covering up some of the truth. They're trying to prevent you from getting to their source of wrong information. So just be careful of people who do that a lot, because you see it a lot. And it's unfortunate, but I figured the best I could do was not be that. John also taught me about UFO disease. Man, that's rampant in this field. And I'll explain what it is. It's somebody has a genuine encounter, and they're brave enough to talk about it, and they get some sort of positive reaction back from it, and they kind of get addicted to that attention and positive reaction they got. And then when that reaction kind of starts slowing down a bit, they want to regain it. But they've only had the one experience, so now they need to make things up. Either whether it's making up new details about the past experience. Oh, I didn't share this, and so it's fine. I almost consider it like reading a good book. The story doesn't have to be real. You could maybe learn a lesson from the story either way. But I am trying to get some legitimacy in this field. These things are very much real. And even in my dissertation, I say that the reason I want to try and legitimize this is there's an incredible amount of trauma being experienced. So I've had encounters with these things in the middle of the night. And I can't talk about that to people because I tried once, and you just ridiculed and put down. And that causes a second wave of trauma. So now you've had this traumatic experience, and you go to get help for it, and you're given another traumatic experience. So I'm hoping that by just showing enough evidence of it, people can stop with the it's not real, and at least eliminate the second wave of trauma that comes for people that have the experiences with these things. Because they don't know how to handle it. And then can you imagine you can't even talk to anyone about it because they're going to put you down? That's really not the way we should be. And if people wonder why the aliens don't land on the lawn and tell us, look how we treat each other on the subject. So what are these things, I did base some of that off of what Bob Lazar said, and then I took that with the information Lou gave John and I feel like if it's the truth, all the pieces are going to fit. And that was the funny thing with Lou, is he's given me ways to test the stuff he's saying, and he's always shown me to be right. So when he tells me things I can't necessarily test, I personally have reason to believe him. And so when we got talking about these craft, You know, Bob said that the way these things fly is that they manipulate gravity. Now, the way they do that is they have a particular element, which is element 115. We know this because they gave us some. At S4, Bob said we have 500 pounds of it that was given to us by them. And so what we did with it, you know, element 115 is incredibly powerful and could probably provide power for the world for a long time to come. We made a bomb out of it. And we made a bomb that powerful enough to destroy something the size of Brazil. Because element 115 makes a 100% efficient reaction. Where like the bombs we used in World War II, those were 1%. And this is 100%. And so 115 is kind of the key, and I don't think we'll get the tech on Earth until we have that. It's almost like gasoline for cars, right? Like if we didn't produce gasoline, we wouldn't have engines for cars, and they'd completely change the way we live. And so with 115, it does a couple things to make these craft work. They machine it into a triangular shape, and once it's machined, it gets put into the engine, and the engine is the most... So I worked in the racing industry for 18 years. I've been around engines and engine parts. I used to help develop them and all that. So I was really excited to see the complexities of an engine from an alien craft. And it's the simplest thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, well, and when you start thinking about it, you're like, that makes sense. Why would it be complicated? But it's basically a cylindrical tube with a smaller tube going into the side of it. And the 115 wedge goes into the top of it, and a cap is put on. Then a proton is sent up the small tube. It goes into the chamber, and it touches the tip of the 115. When that happens, that's turned into 116 with the added proton. 116 is incredibly unstable. In fact, 115 is kind of an anomaly in the periodic table the way it is stable. And Bob said it only occurs again at 200 and something. So as it gets to 116, it immediately becomes unstable, transmutes back to 115, and in that process throws off antimatter. So now there's antimatter in the chamber, and that antimatter reacts with some matter, gas, whatever they put in there, and that's the 100% reaction they get to power the craft. That gets sent out on these circuit boards that get sent to the gravity manipulators. The cool thing was that Bob had built, John Lear, a half-scale model of the engine. And so when I was at John's, like he would take it out and we would play with it. And so I got to see like a hands-on example of that engine that Bob worked on. And so I was able to get more familiarity with it, I think, than some other people were. And so the other thing about the 115, gravity is a wave. And there are two types of gravity waves, A and B. Gravity B, we'll just say, is big, like what keeps us on Earth, this gravity, right? It's very weak. You can jump and break it. Gravity A is more of an atomic level. It's what keeps a nucleus of an atom together. And we know how strong that gravity is by splitting nucleuses of atoms. And so, at least this is how Bob explained it. And so, Bob said that the nucleus of the 115 is a unique property because it's so dense and the gravity in it's so strong that the gravity wave comes slightly outside of the nucleus. And he said the engine on the craft, that's how it harnesses a gravity wave to manipulate. And he said what they do is these cylindrical objects that he says are the manipulators, they're directional, and if they're going to make a long flight, they go on their side. The manipulators pinpoint the location they want to fly to, pull that place to them, and they go back with it. So they're not flying like an airplane going through the sky. When they're in our atmosphere, they're trying to balance on our gravity, and they can be even a little bit wobbly sometimes. It's kind of funny. It almost looks like somebody's holding it on a stick when you see them on some occasions. And so when you think about that, Each one of these craft has an engine on it that can do that. And I hear, and especially around Sedona, all the time, the most common word I hear is portals. Everyone's talking about portals. I don't know anyone that's seen one. I actually have a picture that we're going to go over in the second half, which, as much as I like to not mention portals, we might have got a picture of one. And the stories behind the portals is, don't worry, this comes back to UFOs. The story behind the portals always confuses me because it's always some different account. Some people think there's a portal in a mountain that's just there, and if you go to it, you go through it into another place. I hear loads of people say there's portals in the sky in Sedona, and that like there's a particular area that has a portal and all the UFOs are coming in and out of that portal. I don't see that myself. I have noticed craft kind of vanishing in the same part of the sky. However, to me, that's Earth's shadow. You know, that's why they're all kind of doing it there. But there are a lot of portals in Sedona, but these are the portals. So if you think about it, each one of these has an engine in it that is making a portal. It's picking a place 1,000,000 light years away, pulling it to it, and going back with it. That is a portal, right? That's the wormhole. That's the Stargate. That's this travel method. So these craft are stargates with a room around them that things and people can go on to use the door, the mechanism to get here. So it isn't necessarily this spaceship that I grew up thinking about. None of them seem to act that way. They are more of the coolest taxi we've ever seen. I mean, it's not that. They are portals themselves, and they're transporting things and beings to here from other places. And as weird as that sounds, it makes more sense the more John and I would get into it. And what we kind of determined by the end of it was that every one of us here is really just this eternal soul inhabiting a temporary container. And I choose that word because when Bob Lazar was getting disclosed at S4, that's how they disclosed him. They were saying this comes from beings from Zeta Reticuli, and they only refer to us as containers. And they said there's been 60 plus revisions to the containers over the time of Earth. And then you look back and you think, well, there have been a lot of different species of humans. Is that what they're referring to? And why does the deepest belly of our government say that we're just souls in containers? That lines up with a lot of bases of religion. And I found it strange that science and religion might come to a crossroad in agreeing that we're all just souls in bodies. And so let's hold that thought. If we're souls just inhabiting these physical containers, then there must be a lot of infrastructure in place behind the scenes to keep this going. You imagine 8 billion souls. All of us have existential amnesia. Can't remember we've done this before. Can't remember the mistakes we made. All we know is we can put effort into going forward. You imagine how many other souls it would take to try to wrangle all of us and keep each one of us on our individual path? When I started kind of thinking about that, it made me think there's got to be so many UFOs if that's the method they use to get from where they are now to here. And there really are that many if you go to the right places. And I mean, you can see them as long as you want. We would bring a little counter like they use at the door of a nightclub sometimes and to the campsite and we'd click it off. I mean, without night vision, there was a night we counted 58 craft in like 45 minutes without using night vision. And so they are there. It's not as rare as it's made out to be. CE5 definitely works, and that's why. That's why it works. It doesn't work because little green men from 1,000,000 years ago know what we're talking about or what we're thinking. It works because the beings on the craft are the ones that have graduated already. They are done with this level. They've learned the lessons here. And when they died, they got to go up to some other higher level. However, they still care about all of us down here, just like we will when we move up. We're going to feel for the ones still on Earth, and we're going to spend a bunch of time coming back to help them out and guide them. You'll hear all the time people talk about ETs as their guides. It absolutely is. So the first encounter I had, Lou told me how to meet ETs. It got to the point where I thought I could be ready for that experience. And I asked Lou in a message and said, hey man, I think I want to meet an ET. Is that possible? And he said, sure. It's so funny because the way Lou talks is just like, yeah, of course, And I said, all right, how do I go about doing that? And he said, you got to go somewhere dark and remote. And he said, there can't be a light switch on the wall. He's like, you can't be in your room, ready to click it on when they show up. He said, try like the basement of an abandoned house in some abandoned city. I was like, that sounds terrifying, yeah. He's like, or he said, go way out into the woods on a moonless night. I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay, and then what? And he said, it just gets scarier. He said, when you do that, go out there and put your hands out by your side, just like this. And he said, do that for like 10, 15 minutes. And while you're doing it, think in your head, I came out here, I'm ready to meet you. And he said, within 10, 15 minutes, one of them's going to come along and they're going to hold your hand. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I was like, I've literally seen it in horror movies, man. Like, that's a ghost movie. I've seen it happen. I don't know if I can do that. And he said, you're the one that wanted to meet him. I was like, dang it. All right. He's right. And so he gave me that info, and I thought I was going to kind of try it the first time. And so the first time I wanted to try it, I had a friend with me who had never seen a UFO. He would come camping with me a bunch. He thought it would be cool to see one finally. We were camping just north of Sedona this time. And there's this big meadow out where we were camping. And I told him, it was like maybe 11 o'clock at night. I said, hey, let's go out to the meadow, look at the sky, and see if we see any UFOs. Excuse me. He said, yeah, sure, let's go. Now, I was excited because he was very skeptical about doing all this. So the fact he agreed to even go to the meadow in the night, I was thankful for that. And as we're walking to the meadow, he's like, I don't know, man. So I'm like, okay, obviously I'm not going to tell him. I'm going to try to get them to like land and meet us. So I was just telling him, like, we're just going to go watch the sky. And so we get up to the meadow. And he was like not the most comfortable. He's like, all right, what if we see one? I'm like, that'd be cool, right? And so we're standing there in the field, and I start thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, guys, I'm ready to meet you, I think. And I just started looking around the meadow. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I didn't put my hands out because I wasn't ready for that. And it was really weird. It was about 5 minutes into it. And it was the first time I've ever heard, like, someone else's voice in my head. And I had just asked the question again in my head. I was like, I think I'm ready to meet you guys. And then I got a reply, and in my head I heard, okay, we're right here. And it was coming from the tree line, like, 40 feet in front of me. They're like, we're right behind the trees. And I got excited for a second. My friend is standing right here next to me. I wasn't saying anything. And I just started walking toward the trees, and it was only like, I don't know, 3 steps. And I was frozen and just bawling my eyes out. Like, I haven't cried that much ever, I don't think. And I look over at my friend Trevor. I'm like, can we go back to the camp? He looks at me like, what happened? Like, oh my God, man, like, let's go. Like, geez, let's get out of here. And as we're walking out of the meadow, I look at him and I say, God, instead of meeting him, I wish I could just fly by in a formation. And he looked at me all weird, like, what do you mean meeting him? Like, he didn't know I was doing that. And then right then, lights came out of the area that we were meadow in, and 2 of them flew over our head real low in formation. So that at least validated to me that what had happened to me in that field I wasn't making it up in my mind, because I really try to keep myself in check a bit. And the reason that I couldn't go through with it was as I started walking to where they said they were, you feel how benevolent they are. I mean, I felt like a piece of shit. Like, I just felt like the worst person. I felt every flaw I've ever felt immediately was brought to my attention as I approached these things that had this such a pure energy about them. Like, I was like, there's no way I could approach these people. I didn't do it. And I just felt like I have years worth of work to do on myself. Like, it really gave me this grounding moment of, oh, that's why we're here. I was like, geez, I can't imagine the shadow work I'm going to have to do to rid myself of all the insecurities I've built up over all whatever incarnations that I'm here to try to get past. But I committed to doing it, and I thought that my encounters out here would at least stop. I actually thought they'd stop. You know, I'd come on these camp trips, and each time I would see a little bit more in the sky. You know, the first time was just lights like this, and then the camp trips would be, the UFOs would come low over the trees and light up really bright. And there's 4 or 5 of us out there watching it. And then, as you can imagine, it gets a little tough to get people to come camping with you a second time when the first time you made them watch UFOs fly over their tent. You're like, all right, go to sleep. And they're like, no, I'm not going to sleep. I can't. What are you talking about? And it was when I went out there alone the first time that's when really things kind of kicked into high gear. So I got to the point where it was time for my annual trip. You know, each time I go, I'm like, I'm not going to see anything new. Each time I go, a little bit more happens. The weirdest thing, the only thing at this point that had happened aside from a UFO was we had a weird smell in our camp one night. We're in our camp one night. It was like 2 a.m. We were drinking whiskey out of the bottle that trip. I mean, we're just having a fun camp trip. And we thought, kind of out of the blue, let's go to the tree line, because we camped right at the tree line along the creek. And we thought, let's go to the tree line and do some Bigfoot yells, you know. But, completely joking. So we went over there and did a couple yells. We're sitting there laughing. And then the 3 of us are leveled by a smell. And the source of the smell was 20 feet. And the 3 of us, all we can describe it as collectively afterward was dead bodies, burnt hair, and burning tires mixed together. The 3 of us, our eyes were red and shut. We were dry heaving, like coughing and dry heaving, like we'd just been pepper sprayed or something. And then the smell vanished in like a minute. It was completely gone. So we just thought that was weird. And my first trip out there alone, I had like crippling anxiety. I didn't think I could camp alone. I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. The minute I get there, I was like freaking out. And I told myself, I'm like, no, the experience you're going to have out there is going to be worth it. It's time to deal with your anxiety. And so I made that trip, and it was day 1. I got up that morning. I started panicking. I was like, I don't know what to do today. And I realized you can do anything you want to do today. You don't have to wait for your hungover friends to get up. Like, nobody's going to tell you what you want to do, stupid. And I wanted to find a petroglyph carving of a spiral. And I had a picture from a ranger, and it was a spiral, and the only thing it said was, oh, I found it off this forest road. And so I found that forest road on the map, drove all the way out there. It was hot and early in the morning. And I found this creek bed, and I thought, all right, I'm going to hike through this creek bed. And so I started hiking through the creek bed looking for any kind of petroglyphs, and I started seeing them, bizarre ones too. In that creek bed is actually a carving of a saber-toothed cat. So that's really old. Yeah, that's Ice Age. And it's actually right across from the saber-toothed cat where I had stopped because I found a big carving, well, big, a few feet high, of a Bigfoot. There's a carving of a big creature, and next to his foot, they carve a footprint next to it. And then there's humans around it waving at it. And I was looking at it, and then that's when it hit me how hot it was. I was out of water. I was maybe a quarter or half mile from my car or something. And about 120 degrees down in this creek bed because it was like an oven in there. There's no wind. And I started getting worried. I was like, oh, crap, I need to get to my car. I'm in a bad spot. And I turned to head back. And when I turned into the wind, I smelled that same rank smell that we had smelled the previous trip at our camp. And I got so nervous. I was like, I don't know. Okay. I was like, there's a Bigfoot. Nope. And I was like, that's not it. I was like, it's probably a dead skunk or something. And so I calmed myself down. I said, follow my steps back, look for anything that's weird, get to your car, get to your water. And I make my way back the trail. I've tried to guess how far that walk was. It's at least 100 yards, maybe 150. Get back to where I started, and I didn't see anything. And then this was only like the second time that I heard another voice in my head, and it was like, just go a little further. It's just like, all right, now let's just go a little further. I do that a lot now, by the way. It's the extra 5 minutes you spend out there or the 30 extra feet you go. So I go a little further, and there it is on the side, the most perfect primate footprint, bigger than my size 12 shoes, and it's knuckle print in the sand. There weren't many sandy areas. It's really rocky down there. And here it was, right there in front of me. Man, I was panicking. I got videos and pictures. You know, they're in the documentaries. And I got kind of excited. I was definitely excited, but I was confused. And I was like, okay, well, there's not an 800-pound guy walking around here with size 13 shoes in 120-degree weather. Like, judging by the depth of the footprint, we were able to figure out how much this thing weighed. And I don't know if you've seen an 800-pound person, but they're not hiking where I was hiking. I can promise you that. Like, there's no way. Because people have asked me that. I was like, tell me how that's possible. And so I was excited, but I was skeptical. And it was 5 out of the 8 next trips that Bigfoot would come through my campsite. Because then I started camping in the same place every time. There's a few people here who have been to the spot. It's right on the creek. And this thing would walk through the creek in the middle of the night. And a couple times with me, one time I had a friend from Brazil, this lady who's very intuitive, come out with me. And the poor thing. So we were getting ready to go to bed. It was like 10:30, 11 at night. And I told her, hey, I'm just going to go walk up to the bathroom. I'll be back. She said, okay. And I left her in the campsite alone. When I came back, she was cowering in the tent. And I thought, oh my God, what's wrong? Like, I couldn't even imagine to begin what was wrong. And she said, the first thing she said is, I thought it was you. I was like, oh, that can't be good. I said, what happened? She said, right after you left, something came walking through the water on 2 feet. She said, I thought it was you, and you were coming back to joke with me. But as it got closer, I could hear how big it was, and I ran into the tent, and I was like, oh no. I was like, okay, that was it again. Yeah, I wasn't here for it. And then the night that I had cameraman and another woman, all 3 of us in the tent, that was the night the Bigfoot came through growling at us. And the craziest thing is I was laying on the ground and the sound is coming from 8 feet in the air. It's not a javelina a couple feet off the ground. And the camera guy was losing his mind. He was so afraid. He had his gun out and everything. I was like, calm down, man. And he said, no, it's out there. And I was like, well, yeah. And he's like, I can't handle it. I said, okay, turn your camera on. He's like, I'm not going out there. I said, that's not what I said to do. I said, if you're afraid, turn your camera on. And he got his camera out and he fumbled around and turned it on. And it was gone like that. It didn't want to be filmed. But it knew we had a camera on. And I've learned to help people that way because there's been several times when people have come out with me, I want to see Bigfoot. And there's been a few times where I take them out there. And there's been a couple times when Bigfoot comes out. And they are not ready for it, no matter how much they think they are. It is not I was going to say it's not a pleasant experience, but that's not true. It's a jarring experience the first time. You know, I've seen them from, the one in the picture I got is like 6.5 feet, but I've seen them from 12 feet to like 15, 20 feet. And when you see something that big, and you know it could just squish you without thinking, it takes some adjustment. So it's not an unpleasant experience, but it's definitely a weird one. And that's actually how I found the Bradshaw Ranch. I was so into this subject and all this stuff, I had never heard of that place because there was nothing on it at the time. The only reason I found it was because I was having Bigfoots harass me. And I had to find out why. Or what are they doing in Sedona? I was like, they can't be monkeys if they're here. And I found, you know, this guy, Tom Dongo and Linda Bradshaw's account of what was going on at the Bradshaw Ranch. And I actually reached out to Tom and on Facebook. And same way I met Karen. That's my move. And, you know, Tom and I got to be good friends. And, you know, he told me, he's like, yeah, there's nothing going on out there anymore. And I thought, well, you know, I saw a video of his MUFON presentation and the amount of evidence he collected out there, and I thought, I just want to see the place. I just want to go out there and just see where you got all that cool stuff. And he said, yeah, sure. And then the next year I had made the trip actually out to the ranch, and the first day I was there, found all kinds of stuff. Dinosaur tracks. Didn't know what I was looking at the time. I didn't read Linda's book till years later. I didn't know that those were tracks from brontosaurus that go walking through the property. Well, when they're fresh in the mud, like right there in front of you, it's hard to say that she was lying when she saw that. I mean, I've seen, we'll get into it a little bit, but we'll get into the ranch in the second hour. But that place is provided, which it probably is. Oh yeah, okay. So we'll get into the ranch in the second hour, which is coming up right now. So I imagine we're going to take a break. This is actually a really cool video. This is the last one of this file. It'll play for a bit. It's 6 minutes long. This was, I think this should be it. There was or it ends with a 6-minute video of, it'll come on in a second. And we'll let it play. The reason I like that one particular video, the UFOs flying really low over the mountains, and it was red. It was a giant red solid light, and we just kept watching it. And I have never seen it. Red light is very tough to see at night, especially in the sky. We can keep letting it play, but Karen, should we take a break?
Sure.
Okay, I think we're at that time. Gets easy to talk about John and UFOs and ramble. There you go.
Thank you.
So, on to the Bradshaw Ranch now. This place is the weirdest place on the planet, I can tell you that. Don't know how to accurately describe it. Tom Dongo and Linda Bradshaw's book is called Merging Dimensions. That seems to be a pretty accurate way to describe this place. I've also described it as a kind of a place where the veil is thin, because you do not know what you're going to encounter when you go out there. And I found Bigfoot tracks, fresh dinosaur tracks from Brontosaurus and a T-Rex, which were both seen on the property. Also other strange footprints, weird shapes, and then other photo anomalies too. So HooDooTall 2, there's 2 episodes out. One's on UFOs, one's on footprints and petroglyphs. So a lot of that is already up, and you can just go on YouTube and see it. A lot of these pictures I haven't posted anywhere yet. And I wanted to kind of show you a lot of the strange stuff that I've been collecting evidence of. And a lot of it, I'm sorry to say, I don't know what it is. I just know it's there. Like, for example, these first few. Out there one night, the best I can do is really just go out and try and shoot pictures. I do have other methods I take where I don't have equipment with me, so I can try to have the personal experience. But this night here, there were 2 lights out at the ranch following me around. That's them right there. One's white and one's red. There they are in a second shot. There it is again over there on the left. There it is as it moved. It was like taking off. Not a clue what they are.
How close does that feel?
Those were probably 60 to 70 feet away. Yeah. Carvings, find so many strange carvings out there. This is in the same creek bed I had the Bigfoot encounter where the saber tooth is and everything like that. I mean, this is a very E.T. looking guy with 3 antennae on his head. They do not carve, the natives didn't carve themselves like that. It's weird that there's a circle with kind of a little rocket going up to him there. These ones here, they're on just on the rock next to it. And the 2 at the top look a lot like a UFO shape with something coming out. However, they could be a cloud with rain. I've just never seen a cloud with rain carved like that. And these are carved all over the place. That one's too intricate to see the detail, but they're actually, it's a cross with outlines around it. And this one had so many outlines around it that it pretty much got filled in. Usually those crosses only have a couple. Oh, you can zoom in. Watch out. Thank you for that. This is one of my favorite ones. Not only is it a spiral, it's a person getting sucked into a spiral. This is his head, and these are his hands. His body's worn away, and he's getting pulled into it. So when I see those spiral carvings out there, this is the first time I saw one that had to do with a person interacting with the actual spiral. This little monster is in paint. Here's his face. I've seen several carvings where they have this big long thing across their head. His body, his hand is out like a monster, like he's reaching for you. And not many references to that creature in other places either. This is a sky person. This is how they carved the sky people. And it was Clifford Mahooty that let me know what these were. I had a chance to sit and talk with Cliff before he passed away. And he was the one to explain to me the things I was finding. In this site with the sky people, there's carvings of upside down people. He told me that's where the natives were visited. His grandfathers would tell him the Kachina come out of their sky shield upside down and invert when they get to the ground. He told me when you find the upside down carvings, that's where they were visited. And sure enough, there's carvings of sky people in the actual location. So this is a neat one. One of the things I wanted to do when I came out with my videos were to get help. I couldn't figure out what was happening on the ranch by myself. And one of the things that happened was Brandon Fugel, that owns the Skinwalker Ranch, he called me and said, "Are you telling me all that's real?" I said, "Yeah, it's all real. I didn't live out here yet." And he said, "I'm coming on your next camp trip." I was like, "Sure you are, buddy." And I got here, and sure enough, Karen came, and Brandon and Thomas Winterthorn, they came. First day, they just took me out to dinner and said, "We're here for 3 days. We're going to do whatever you tell us to do." They were the nicest people. That's why we got the episode from Beyond Skinwalker about the Bradshaw Ranch, was because they came out there with me for those days. Unfortunately, the approach the film crew took didn't yield any results, but there's a reason for that. So some of these photos are going to be a little bit of like before and after, because when you're out in the field, especially here, when you want to get strange photos, you have to take more than one. You always shoot 3 in a row. And it's when you get something in only one photo that you know you really got something interesting. So some of these will be with nothing, and then the next shot will be something. So like as we're going through, this one here had this object showing up out here in the sky. That showed up right in the middle of the shot. There's a lot of these, I've heard them called rods or skyfish. And there seem to be quite a few of those at the ranch. Okay, I'm really excited about this one. Everyone tries to claim that the skyfish and the rods are bugs. I'm so happy because I got a photo of a bug. That's what bugs look like when you get their flash photo. The other things are not bugs. That's a weird footprint. I don't know many things with 6 toes. We looked it up. There are a couple animals that have 6 toes, but none of them are that big and look like that. There was a track line of those. There's videos of that. Really strange. Couldn't figure out what that thing was. And looking at the track line, they were not double steps of something. Each track was this kind of shape. Immediately, I thought it could have been a small bear, but there are no claws. It wasn't a bear. I thought this shot was interesting because I went to the ranch one day and the locked gate had tracks driving into the property. Since then, I've seen government people or people from the university access the ranch and go in there. This footprint was a weird one. I was in the ranch at the daytime and I call them witches now because I heard women laughing. And I was like, okay, people partying out here? Like, there's no cars. Like, I would have seen their car. Like, there's no way. And I stopped, and I was like, don't hear it. And I kept walking again, and then I hear them louder this time. Distinctly 3 to 4 women's voices laughing, cackling. I walked over there, and all I found was a giant tree branch break and this giant footprint. In person, it was easy to see there were 3 big toes and 1 big pad. Let's see, I think I have it. Yeah. The size of it was 14 inches. Yeah, it's a big, huge track. The tree branch was massive that it broke too. That was just another measurement of it. Skyfish again. That one shooting across in front of. So this house is the original adobe house that was built by a homesteader at the Bradshaw Ranch. And they aren't haunted houses. It's just, I don't know if it'll let me scroll over. Yeah. So you can see the skyfish and the rods, they kind of have a spiral pattern to them. They're moving very fast in a spiral pattern, which, not sure. Some of these were even on live photos on an iPhone, and the skyfish show up at once. Yeah, we thought that was pretty weird. That's just a close-up of that same one there. Here's another one, another rod showing up this over here. These things, like that big long one that was in the middle. Same one. I think that's just a picture showing the house. Oh no, there it is at the bottom. Yep. There it is right there. Another little rod zipping by. There's the next shot without the rod, as I was taking several shots. See, sometimes we get these big cloudy and smoky apparitions.
Can you see the rod with your naked eye?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That one was really cool, and you can still see a bit of the spiraling as it came and made its little loops.
Are they super fast?
Very fast, yeah. That one was right in front of my face. Yeah, that was right in front of the camera. And that's not a bug. The camera would capture a bug. See, that's the next shot. So it's just there for the one shot. These footprints were the weirdest ones I've seen. These are alien feet. That's the only thing I've been calling them. So when I originally saw them, I didn't get video. I thought, no, it had to be an animal. There's a whole track line of these things. And when I first looked down, I thought, okay, maybe it's a double step of a deer. However, the whole track line has that same pattern and footprint. Deer do not double step every step. 2 inches wide, 2 inches long. Tiny. But the gate between steps was 42 inches, I think. And there was a baby with it. There were a set of tracks next to it. Here's more of the track line. There were a set of tracks next to it that were very faint. Actually, you can see one of the baby feet right here. Yeah, I mean, it was an entire track line of these things. That is a light shining at me from inside the house, over there in the far corner. There's the next picture where it ain't. Weird rods of white light. I think we're going to get into a bunch of the white light ones. There was one particular night I was out there, and there were these white lines showing up in all my photos in all these different directions and all kinds of, yeah, these are them. So you'll see these streaking white lines going through. They seem to be a lot closer to the camera than they were other nights. That one was weird too, because it wasn't even a streaking line. It has this distinct line, but it just has this beautiful fade coming off of it the whole way. And I'll tell you, I've shown these to people who will tell me, like, that's the feather of an angel wing. And I can hear a lot of stuff, and I do think that's creative and wonderful, but I can't put that stamp on any of this kind of stuff, really. More of the white line showing up that night. Yep, big, huge skyfish over there. This line. Really close to the camera. Another one right there in the middle. Not only white lines, but this bizarre thing, yeah. So the lines were coming in and this weird shape. These are flash photos, so any movement had to be really fast. You know, when I photograph UFOs, I open the shutter for 30 seconds to capture the movement. But here's another set of, I'm guessing we're Bigfoot. They didn't have toes, but I'm not always surprised if the toes fade away. However, this was a distinct track line that went on the far side of the property, and it's been there for months. It's still there because the things are so heavy. When they step, they're burying all these little rocks under the ground, 2 inches, and then when it rains, silt fills in the footprints. And so if you don't catch them the first time, they're really easy to see a month later because there are these big, obvious, clear patches in the ground after it has rained. This is a side view of those same tracks. Yeah, they were about 14 inches long, each one of them. Very, very heavy. That's the cat. So Because some people say, oh, maybe it's a double, you know, I talk about double prints and double steps a lot. There is a big cat out there, so I do have to stay a little bit safe sometimes. However, this would be the double step of a cat. So some people jump a little too quick to alien. I really try to make sure I can identify it if possible. Or if you can identify something I've found, absolutely tell me. More again of these weird lights. And when I see these in person, it looks like, see how it disappears? It almost looks like a flashlight. That's about what it looks like, shining at you. But there's no one floating around the sky with a flashlight. Let's see here. Here's, oh, wrong button. So this was another one where it showed up just in the one shot there at the bottom. Another rod, skyfish kind of thing. There's another one. That one's a really good one. We'll zoom in on him. This was the night Brandon Fugel was out there with us. You can really see the spiral on that thing. They're really beautiful when you get to see them up close, yeah. And these were things that Tom and Linda captured quite a bit out there too. So I felt kind of fortunate that I was able to also be able to capture. That's a really good, that's one of my favorite ones altogether, yeah. And you can almost see the spiral effect from my perspective shifted as it was angled this way and kind of came straight into front of the camera. These are carvings, some of the Littlefoot carvings. In the area where I found the carving of Bigfoot, over the years now, I've found a second carving of Bigfoot. They always carve these little feet. If they're carving Bigfoot, they carve a little foot next to it, so you know that that thing makes footprints. There's other weird creatures out there carved that don't have these feet next to them, and I just assumed they were carving something other than a Bigfoot that time. This one is really strange. It's over here in the side. I don't know what caused the sharp lines. That is incredibly strange to have that happen. That's out in a field at the ranch. I mean, there's literally nothing out there but grass. There shouldn't be anything to do that, that's for sure. A little bit closer of it. That was the next shot that had nothing. So it showed you that thing had just appeared quickly and disappeared. Now these footprints I found in that same dry creek where all the carvings of aliens and big feet are. And they really threw me off because they're not boots. I wear boots. I was working as a ranch hand at the time. So these are my size 13 hiking boots. So you can see how big this track was. I went back the next day and got 3D scans of them. But the thing that stood out to me is there is no tread. And if the ground is soft enough and you're wearing boots, the mud sticks to your boot completely, and when you step up, it leaves a really rough patch because the mud's stuck to your boot. You do those two things. You leave tread or you pull mud with you. You do not do this with boots on. And so I stumped at that, but there's also a lot of carvings of giant creatures in that creek bed. I found those to be pretty strange. There are no trails there. It's not a hiking place. It's just a creek bed that I know about. Or they're alien space boots. I mean, honestly, I don't know. Yeah, maybe they are. Maybe the ETs that visited those natives are still visiting that place. I don't know what they would wear. I don't know if they have, I imagine they have Earth suits like we have space suits, is my guess. That their natural body wouldn't work here, and they need some other kind of thing to have on. This one is the most UFO carving I've seen. It's funny because there's a little dog down here looking at it. On the other side of the dog, it's not quite in the shot, is a man looking through what looks like a telescope at the sky, which they didn't have that. Sure looks like a dinosaur. You know, there's these reports of dinosaurs. I've seen their tracks. And I've tried to find birds that could be. I'm not seeing a roadrunner. It has a long, thick tail, 2 legs, vestigial arms, and a head with kind of a bill on it. There are dinosaurs that look like that, but none of us can figure out exactly what that carving is. But it's in that same creek bed too. That area is very, very strange. And here's the one that I told you about earlier. Here's the Bigfoot carving I found when I encountered the creature. So the Bigfoot's in the middle there, and his foot is right here, They carved his big footprint. These are them. They are not angry at it. They're waving at it. And I analyzed it with a few other people, and what we actually feel like is it could be the Bigfoot brought him that deer it's holding. So maybe it was a time of famine or something. Maybe it brought them food when they needed it. Can't be sure what's being depicted there, but they're definitely not mad to see him. You know, they look happy to see the guy.
What's the physical size of that?
It's pretty high up, but from the size of this creature is probably 2.5 feet. It's pretty big, yeah. Here it comes into some more photos at the ranch. This is the night the smoky apparition started appearing. Here's the first photo, and there's the second photo. I have no idea. And this part too. I mean, the smokiness, that a lot looks like smoke, but then you get in here, and it almost looks like hair. It's really bizarre. Correct. In the smoky ones, I was not seeing it when I took the photos. You can't be on that property and not feel weird. I don't know that I'm that good at that. I'll try to cover some at the end. The photos I can at least show you and we can agree on. The feelings are tough. You're uncomfortable there the whole time you're there. I mean, there's things watching you and you can't see them. And each person takes it differently. I've gotten used to it now. There's times now when I bring people to the ranch. I'm like, yeah, come on, guys, let's go. And it's the middle of the night. We got no flashlights. Like, what are you doing? They're like freaking out. I'm like, oh, right. You're not used to this place. So I've become used to it or accustomed to it. And now it feels like home. Like I'm the most comfortable I can be when I'm out at the ranch at night. But it just took me realizing nothing was there to hurt me. Once I really understood that, all the fear and uncomfortableness went away. So now the only thing you're going to feel, and it depends on how you take it, there are higher level things there watching you the whole time, and you can't see them. Yeah, yeah. So let's see if we can get smoky apparition again. Yeah, there's that one. Then that one, it just flooded the camera. More of it as it kind of faded away. Yeah, that's right. So this is, the ranch house is right there. This is the old adobe house, and this is the picket fence. And this walkway is where people's arm hairs stand up. And if you walk through this with dowsing rods, they spin around. We've tried that a bunch of times, and it never fails. That was the next shot. I took that. That's the second shot. So if it was physical smoke, it won't do that. That can't.
What's the elapsed time between the two?
Instant. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So then there's one. Yep, there it came again. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so I don't think I noticed that before. That's a plant on the ground. I'm not sure how that got a light source in the second shot and not the first. Maybe it was lit from the top. That's really weird, actually. I'm going to have to go back and look at that because it's not lit up the plant. You can't see the plant there.
And you didn't move the camera at all in those, between the two shots?
Slightly. Just, I mean, you know, as much as your hand would move. But.
Maybe that's a light field.
Oh, no, there it is. Yeah. Oh, maybe I was zoomed in a little bit before and I couldn't see it. Maybe that was why. More smokies. First shot, second shot. Oh, that one looks creepy, yeah. So this one here, there was the first shot. There's all these little weird things appearing here. Next shot, nothing. Ah, this is a good one. That's an airplane. When I capture UFOs, I know they're UFOs because they never have strobe lights. So when I hold the shutter open for 30 seconds, it helps me a lot determine what I'm seeing because I can zoom in. These are plane strobes. Every plane or helicopter has them. None of the UFOs have them. And it definitely is good to know not only get pictures of the unknown stuff, but get pictures of the known stuff so I have something to compare it to. So then when I capture a craft, it's obviously not a plane. Planes have strobe lights on them every time. Yeah. And so the first job I had out there, I was a ranch hand because I needed to be there and work. And that was the first thing I saw. So at night on the little ranch I worked on, I worked in trade for rent in a small trailer. So I'd go outside my trailer and just set up and just start taking night sky pictures. Then some of the crafts start to, would do these little loops right before they disappear. It just kind of, yep. This is the coolest one. I think the full shot is, I have it later, but this is the one that you want to see. The full photo is much bigger. This is zoomed in. I was on the ranch I lived on, and I kept getting these shots of the UFOs going straight. But right when this happened, the bright light in the middle, that's Mars. So I was sitting there, and I thought, I'm going to ask the aliens something. Hey, this is really cool. Can you put on a little dance for me? And this happened. And I saw it. I saw the craft zipping around Mars. I was like, oh my God, I hope my camera's getting this because it's doing it. And when I looked at the film, I was like, yes. I don't care who says what. That ain't a satellite. They don't do that. Smoky apparitions when it was between me and two other people out there. The smoke was appearing between us. This run should be good. So I think these all go in order. At least what this is here, this has happened a few times. This is the craft. I was out there, and the mountains of Jerome would be over here a bit. This is the orchard, the old orchard field. This is the hillside that Bob Bradshaw saw the craft come over and drop the orbs. So we're looking towards Mingus Mountain. And I was watching that thing move. Me and another person were out there. We watched it for 20 minutes before I set my camera up. Because we're just like, as we were sitting there watching, I was like, oh crap, I should get pictures of this. And so we went out to get pictures of it, and it was, you know, it was this weird kind of roundish light. However, it gave us a show. None. I've never heard one make sound. So it looked a little different there. No. You could see a bit of the movement. So then it was no longer round. It turned into that. And it's still not the best shot of it. There it is again. Now it's completely past this tree that it was over before. I've got to zoom back out to go to the next. Here's the good one. Then it did that. No idea what it was doing. I don't know if it was dropping something. But, you know, there's people out there that say everything we get pictures of are airplanes and satellites, and I gotta say that's not true. These are not that. There's something else. Not Bigfoots. I tracked that thing for 3 months. All around the valley in Sedona, 9-mile radius I was running into this thing. And that is a big foot, but it's not Bigfoot. I've never heard of a Bigfoot that had 3 toes like this. And these toes here, like each one's like the size of a lemon. Like they're giant, they're big toes. And these tracks, I was finding them, oh yeah, all over the place, all over the valley for a short period of time. And then the creature vanished. It was gone, never have seen. Didn't get eyes on the creature. I got close to it during the daytime. I was in a place I shouldn't be, and I heard it. It must have been napping under a tree because I heard it thump down on the ground, and then it sounded like it rolled and broke a bunch of branches on the ground. It scared me because it was really big. I started sneaking my way around, and as I got close to the tree, I saw another 3-toed track leading to the tree. And when I got to the tree, there was just nothing there. That's the best way to, that's the best way to make them disappear. People put cameras at the ranch. I basically know to just don't go to that part of the ranch anymore. Yeah, they can see it. They must be able to see it. And I was reading somebody else's paper, and I learned that birds, I've always known birds can sense the Earth's magnetic field. That's how they can travel long distances. But recently they discovered birds can see the magnetic field. It's the Cry4 protein in their eyeball, CRY4. That protein lets them see the magnetic field. And I just think it's safe to say these other creatures also have that. So if you put a trail cam or something out, they can just see it a mile away and just avoid it. Because they do. You put them out at the ranch and nothing shows up. This picture is this thing, which is weird. It's casting a shadow, but there's nothing there for it to cast a shadow onto. It's casting a shadow like in the air. Yeah, that was a odd one. This is the tree branch break that was above the large footprint I showed you earlier when I heard the laughing. That was broken right above it. And at the base of that, something had peeled the bark off a tree trunk to eat the termites. There's the bark. So it peeled all those big pieces off just to get to the bugs. I haven't found any animals out there that can do that. There's a bigger picture of it. So the footprint was about right here on the ground. The bark is back here and the broken branch. But the other weird thing about that is I wouldn't have discovered that if I wouldn't have heard the laughing. So I was like, well, what are you doing? Like, quit messing with me, man. Like, orbs, weird light showing up. That's the porch of the Bradshaw house there. One of the orbs is in the house, the one on the far right. Once again, yep, weird light showing up out there. Peeking at me between the fence posts. There it was, just following me around that whole night. And I do a pretty good job of that, I think. There it was again, just that little guy following me. This photo is one of my favorites. This mural is about maybe a mile from the ranch. It is a painting, it's not a carving, so it's a pictogram mural, and it's quite long, it's 30 or 40 feet long. This is at the one end, and these are very oddly shaped, decorated people. Wearing.
Oh, yeah.
And these guys all have feet. They all have little feet. See this guy's eyes and his little helmet? They all got helmets on. And so it seems like they're doing some kind of ritual. But the odd thing is there's a white Bigfoot in the back watching him. Has his head and shoulders here. And he's there. And over here, there's a mantis, his red eyes, his head, and his squared off body here. And the funny thing is the white Bigfoot, just over from this is a painting of a mammoth. I mean, so this thing is 10,000 years old, and they're claiming a white Bigfoot, which is exactly what Linda Bradshaw saw on the property, and what me and another woman, Monica, gathered hair samples on the ranch of white, big, crazy white hairs on the ranch. Once again, yeah, weird objects, the smokiness coming up in the sky over there, disappearing, just showing up for the one. These weird lights, yeah, look at that, right in the middle there. It'll just take me a little too long to zoom in on each one, but for the most part, they're kind of blurry when you zoom in on them. It is at night, and I'm doing flash photos. I feel fortunate to get kind of anything. If there's some that I know are good, there it is, just disappearing. And reappearing in a different spot. Bink, over there now. This is my first communications with Bigfoot. I'd been feeding them, we're leaving gifts for each other, talking, and I made a chalkboard on the outside of the building I had designated to communicate with them. And I had drawn some symbols and things, and it was the summer solstice a couple years ago. I got to see it for the first time in the day and found the symbol that it made on the chalkboard, which is that chevron and horizontal line symbol there. We did show it around and found a match. Matches a symbol seen on a UFO in New Mexico by Officer Zamora. I think it was in the 60s. If you look up the Zamora incident, that symbol was one of the symbols drawn that matched the one on the craft he saw. And I'm confused by it because the ranch or something on the ranch is referencing an old UFO incident, which it has done before to Linda. It showed Linda a photograph from a UFO incident in the 50s in Washington. So, open-ended question is, why is the ranch pointing at old UFO incidents to us? Another cool skyfish over here coming along. You can definitely see that spiral on it. UFOs, yeah, this is just kind of what you see the most common out there. So this is a 30-second exposure. So that's how far it flew through the sky within those 30 seconds. And when you watch enough satellites, you realize they're all about the same speed. So it gets easier to identify things that aren't. Another really cool little spiral rod flying by. One of the weirdest UFO pictures I've taken yet. Yeah, I'm used to these nice straight lines, and then you get someone showing off. You can clearly see how, so I use a tripod, and that reflects in the fact that you can see all these tiny, tiny stars. The camera is not shaking. This was movement from something above the camera. And it went all the way up there, made a bright flash, and then flew all the way back down here. That one is really, really, I was really lucky to get that. I mean, it almost looks like the craft tried to stay in frame. I mean, it was flying out of frame, and it was like, oh, wait, I want to make sure you get it. Yeah, that's pretty weird. I think this is the run that leads to the portal. All right. I was out there with two friends, and once again, the same orb I showed you over the hillside, this is that same hillside. I saw another light coming, so I said, all right, we're going to shoot photos of this thing the whole time it's flying. 30 seconds. When the camera's done, hit it again. Jerome and Mingus Mountains are over here. This craft is flying this way. And so we're going to go through these. And when the craft disappeared, the two people next to me both freaked out, and they were both women. They both said, oh my God, did you see that? I was like, I was hitting the camera. Like, you mean the craft? They said, no, something showed up in the sky. I said, what? And they both said the same thing, a giant swirl. They said a giant swirl showed up and then disappeared. And we were putting buttons on the camera, so I was hoping the camera would have captured a little something, and it most definitely did. So we're going to kind of go through these. It's just kind of, at first you're just going to kind of see, just keep your eyes here. I'm not going to zoom in too much. You'll just see it start flying. Here comes the craft, zooming along. That's the shot. So this is the craft as it flared up and disappeared. And this is the object the women saw up here in the sky. Yeah, that's the only time I've really been tempted to use that portal label, man, because it sure seems like, but nothing came in or out of it. There's a enhanced version of it so you can see it better. Yep, it's concentric circles, yeah. That appeared right over the same hillside that Bob Bradshaw saw his craft come out of. There's just a kind of a close-up of it. And the other thing was, it appeared in the next shot, right here, dimmer. And I had repositioned the camera. So it's not a mark on the camera lens or something, it's a completely different part of the sky over here. Just a lot dimmer. It was fading out right when, like they had said, it appeared and disappeared. That one was really, really strange. Let's just close up of that second shot there. And then the Bigfoots. So I've had this Bigfoot photo I've shown a number of times because I really like it. And it's what keeps me motivated in trying to encounter the Bigfoots out there. I know they're there because it let me take its photo that night. If it didn't let me, and I mean let me take the photo, I wouldn't be as motivated. I would have given up a long time ago. And I'd always shown the one photo which really shows the creature well. And it was just a couple weeks ago, I found my old phone, I was going through the camera roll, and found the pictures from that night. And it's in 5 photos, not one photo. And First thing I did was call my favorite investigator and send him to Karen so we could look at them together. The really weird thing is, in the field, I've seen them disappear. The time I saw it in the daytime, we were looking right at each other. It turned, walked away, went behind a tree, and vanished. There's stories of them walking through walls on the property and stuff like that. The first 3 shots of this next set, you can see it has a body. And in the last 2, it does not have a body. It's a floating head. And I can't figure that out other than I got photos as it was vanishing. So these are nighttime grainy photos, as all Bigfoots are. But it's hunched down right here with glowing eyes. This isn't the best photo, it's just the start of it. It's right here. It is actually casting a shadow onto the house in these shots. So I know it was physically there. There it is again. Now you can see both its eyeballs staring at me right here. This is his arm, its head. When Karen and I look close at these, there's something on its back. Because in each picture, the shape of the back is a little different. And both of us wanted to go, it's a baby, but we don't, it's not, but we want to say that, but we don't know that it's a baby. So then there's the third shot. That one I was able to enhance a little better. You can see it's casting a shadow on the house here as it goes this direction. That's the end of the front porch. And now the next 2, so I got these. I was shooting just like this, click, 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 just taking a panoramic. I didn't notice the creature in the shots till about 2 weeks later. So then the next ones, now it's over here and there is no body. It is a floating head and 2 eyeballs now. And I wish I had better answers for you. They do disappear. And I feel like these string of photos show it disappearing. There it is again. It's just a head and eyes at this point. You can see the grass. There's no shadow on the house. There's no big bump back here like in the other ones. The Bigfoots are really weird things. Yeah. That is kind of a cropped one where the only editing I do to them is brightness and contrast. I don't Photoshop or do anything other than just try to change the lighting to try to see what's in the photo more. But you can really see the shadow it casts there, its arms and its head. That was a little one. I've bent down right there to recreate that photo, and that one's probably only as tall as me, just 3 times wider. These were taking UFO shots. These are when I lived on the ranch. This one I really liked because it has an airplane right here and a UFO, but look at that. This is as the UFO appeared in the sky. So usually I'm out there and I see a craft flying and I set my camera up and hit, and then I get this nice big streak. This one, the craft appeared after I had already hit the shutter because I was trying to get a photo of the plane as reference, and this thing appeared, and that's, I think, the only shot I have with this kind of little phenomena happening right before a line, and a little bit at the end too. See that right there? I was getting great pictures out there. That's just an enhanced version of it, so you can see it a little better.
What's the shutter speed like? 1/500th of a second?
30 seconds.
Oh, that's a 30-second elapse.
Correct. I intentionally leave the shutter open to capture the movement. Because if I just take a quick shot, it's just going to look like a picture full of stars. So I learned through the process, if you can capture the movement of the craft, it's a lot easier to tell that it's not just a picture of stars. As you can see here, 30 seconds, that thing did a whole lot of stuff in that amount of time. That's just a close-up of it. Same part of the sky, different craft showed up. This one got progressively brighter as it went. You can see how and these in the background back here would be Phoenix. That's the direction I'm looking. So I was in Cottonwood looking toward Phoenix for that. Close-up of the same one.
Have you ever tried that 30-second elapse on the creatures on the Bradshaw Ranch?
I've done those shots out there a bunch. I haven't had any luck yet, though, but I still keep trying it. They work good for like ghostly figures and stuff. I should try them more in Jerome. But I still do time-lapse shots of the ranch all the time. And when nothing's happened, we'll make it fun, Karen and I. She'll bring her lightsabers and we do long exposure. Yeah. If you haven't seen those pictures yet, they're pretty good. Yeah, these were just craft flying by here. Another one, like that spot of the sky was really active. Another one with a plane here and 2 UFOs here coming up. Several craft. One is a plane. This craft, though, was pulsing light at regular intervals. That's what these big lumps are. It just set off a big discharge of light every couple seconds. If you go on a UFO tour, or if you go out with some of us UFO nuts, a lot of times you'll hear us say, that one is flying like a drunk driver or like a bumblebee. That's what that is there, yeah. That's kind of what we mean. They don't always take this real straight path. Sometimes they just start, we are not sure why. Yeah, you know, or they just one too many cosmos. That was a good, I thought that was pretty good, yeah. Maybe one of the stranger pictures I've taken at the ranch at all. Oh, wow, we're already over time. Maybe we can maybe, I have a couple things to talk about, but maybe we can end with this picture. This was a flash photo I took at the Bradshaw house one night. There's no reason this should look like that. I've not been able to figure it out. There's 2 objects in the sky. This one here, and this here. And that's not time-lapse. Yeah, this thing, we should do posters of that or something, because I feel like we could look into this for a long time and probably find new stuff. I wonder if there's things in this photograph that aren't actually on the physical ranch property, like the telephone pole and the one shot from Linda Bradshaw. So I know we have to wrap up, but there's one thing that Karen and I have been doing for years, which is celebrating the summer solstice out near Sedona. And we're opening that up to anyone else who wants to join. The summer solstice, the actual name for it is Litha, L-I-T-H-A. So that's always when the meetup happens, every Litha. And we're going to call it Square One. And the reason we're calling it that is because this is our invite to have a day and a night where the people who are ready or think they're ready to have that first sighting of a UFO or go chasing Bigfoot, it's a time for them to get together with the people that have had those in the experience. And we get together at the place where it started for all of us, and we start from square one together. You don't come there and hear people lecture. You're going to come there and we're all going to be the expedition for it, you know? And it's not everyone has to do the same thing. In fact, we don't want there to be much of a plan because we want this to develop organically and turn into something that is free for people to come to. It's based on watching UFOs and hunting Bigfoots. Anyone can attend and make it fun. You know, Karen and I've gone out there with lightsabers. I imagine a day when we meet for the summer solstice and it's like the Star Wars camp people saw Bigfoot because he looks like Chewbacca, and the anime characters, they saw more UFOs, and maybe there's something to that. It's a time for just everyone to come and do what they feel like they would do to celebrate the solstice. The thing about ritual is I was taking all these courses and getting my PhD in metaphysical science. The thing about ritual is there's no way to do it wrong. Ritual is done correctly if you did it the way you intended to do it, the way you wanted to do it. And to take that and make it a lot lighter, that's what this is, really. When you go out to encounter Bigfoots and UFOs, you know, what do you think CE5 is? You're doing a ritual. You're collectively getting together to contact something. So don't let the word ritual freak you out at all. But our Square One event is going to be very loose the first couple years as we kind of let it develop, and we want to turn it into its own thing. And that thing is us getting together at the solstice, no matter where we've gone or what we've seen, we always enjoy starting at the square one again and doing it all over again. Well, let's do it with people who haven't taken those steps yet. In order to do that, we need to start at the same spot. So that's where the name Square One comes from. And so we'll be meeting up the 21st. It's that next weekend, man. We have a campsite that's free to camp at, picked out. It's along the 525, the road out to the Bradshaw Ranch, called the Windmill Campsite. And up until this week, there were porta potties there. And I drove by and there were not. So the one thing I'm just suggesting, you don't have to camp in that campsite. Stay anywhere you want. But if you want to see UFOs, come to Sedona for the solstice, and we at least meet at that site. If it's hot that day, we'll all go to the river together and have a blast doing that. And then we'll skywatch, and we'll go to the ranch and do Bigfoot stuff, or we'll do whatever sounds like a fun thing to do. And we'll turn that into our annual event that hopefully turns into like a big festival one day for weirdos like us, you know. Really appreciate all of you coming. I don't really step out and talk about this stuff in person a lot. It's really has a lot to do with Karen asking me to come out here. I believe so much in what she's doing, and she's put such a great effort. Yeah. Pretty much I do whatever that woman asked me to do. So just know you got something special here with Mufon in Tucson, and I hope this keeps getting bigger and bigger, and I'll come back anytime. I got something worth saying. Thank you. Oh, also, I do have something kind of unique that I brought that is kind of for sale. I only made 8. They're a little expensive. I'm asking $100 for them. And what they are these USB sticks I made in commemorative boxes and stuff. And those sticks have 160 photos of anomalous things from the ranch, the ones you've seen today, plus more. It has a whole hour and 15 minutes of the raw UFO footage I was playing. Plus it has 45 minutes of footage of all the tracks I've been finding. Also a copy of my dissertation on there. And then one of the boxes has a pin in it. And so if anyone buys one, and if anyone gets the one with the pin, that pin grants you kind of a free private tour out there with me to the petroglyphs and the ranch and stuff. So those are out there for you, and some stickers. I did bring some stickers as a way to sell, but I think we'll probably just give some to you, the Baby Raven stickers. That Baby Raven logo is something I created for people like us. Ravens are smart and wise. We're not yet, but maybe through our experiences, we can become wise like a raven is. So that would make us a baby raven, right? We're still on the ground with our feet, but we're going to learn and we're going to become like ravens too. So yeah, I really thank all of you guys for coming, letting me talk and share all this stuff with you. Hopefully it's something you haven't quite seen yet, or gets you interested or motivated to go out and do the same thing. Thank you guys.